The microphone is not working.
One, two, three. Can you hear me? It seems better. In the name of God, the compassionate and the merciful, I seek guidance and assistance from God to be able to do justice with the time that I have and to observe the rights of the audience over the speaker. Thanks to God, every time we come to this place, to the University of Nairobi, and meet our friends and colleagues here, we find lots of commonalities. And we find that we are working for the same cause, and that is to spread understanding, education, respect, and light in one word. I want to offer something as a Muslim perspective on our theme of respecting the figures, the scriptures, the holy places of other religions, and how we should regard them. And maybe what I say is not said in this way before, but it doesn't mean that it's unorthodox. So sometimes when I talk to people say every Muslim speaks like this. I say I don't see any reason why they shouldn't speak like this, because I speak based on the same scriptures and the same methodology, but sometimes maybe people articulate things differently, or So what I am sharing has two main arguments, two main elements. One is respecting what is and who is sacred in other religions or other denominations of our own religion. The other argument is that when it comes to Abrahamic faith, it's actually better not to say to respect the sacred scriptures or places of worship of other religions. It's sacred for you as well. So sometimes I say, I as a Muslim or as a Christian should respect the place of worship of another religion because it is sacred for them. It's not sacred for me, but I have to respect. But my argument is no. My argument is that is when we talk about places of worship for pagans and idol worshippers. We respect the places of worship because it's sacred for them. But when it comes to Abrahamic faith, our places of worship are sacred for all of us. I, as a Muslim, look at church as a sacred place. Not sacred place for my Christian friends. It's a sacred place for me as well. And a mosque is a sacred place for a Christian as well. If we are all believing in the same God of Abraham. So, the first part already has been addressed by different speakers. And I think it's just enough to refer to one verse of the Quran for the first part, that if something is sacred for others, then you should not be disrespectful. There were some Muslims, as we find in some texts about exegesis of the verse 108 of chapter 6. Because they were new to Islam, they had to learn things And sometimes some people were doing mistaken things and the Prophet was correcting them. It seems that there was a practice that some Muslims were not respectful towards the idols. Because they were themselves, idol worshippers, the first generation of Muslims, they were all idol worshippers. And then they realized that they cannot worship something that they create with their own hands. Someone that doesn't speak, doesn't bring any benefit to themselves. So you can imagine that they must be very much against idols, because they thought idols kept them, away from truth. As a result, they developed some kind of, dislike or hatred towards the idols. Okay, as long as this is something in your heart, it's a personal thing. Whether it is good or bad, that's a personal thing. But then when you're in front of people who still are worshipping those idols, you start saying bad things to those idols. They thought maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this is a sign of faith. But God revealed this verse, 108 of chapter 6. وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Don't use bad words about their gods or anyone that they worship other than God the One. They had idols equal to the number of the days. So they had in Mecca 365 idols. Some of them were greater, like Lat, Uzza. Some of them they used to make idols from dates. And when there was shortage of food, they eat these idols and later they make it again. So, God says, don't use bad words about whatever they worship other than God. Why? For different reasons. First of all, a believer is supposed to be very good when it comes to talking. We shouldn't be impolite people. We should observe etiquettes in our speech. The Quran says, قُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. Whenever you speak to people, even people outside your community, not just community members, any person, strangers, enemies, the Quran says, speak what is good and beautiful. And even in another place it says, يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Not only it's good, the most beautiful things. So as a believer, we are supposed to be the most respectful, the most polite people. It's not a sign of faith that you are using bad words to other people. So God says you should not use bad words against these idols. First, it doesn't match your etiquettes. Secondly, this is not going to stop there. Then they are going also to react. Then they are going to insult your Lord. Who has caused insulting God the Almighty now? The believers, who didn't act properly, and they provoked others, that now out of anger, they say the same thing or even worse things to your own Lord. So, when it comes even to idol worshippers, we have the responsibility of engaging with them with respect. It doesn't mean that we agree with them. It doesn't mean that we say you are right, we are right, everyone is right. No, we are honest about our faith. We don't say you are right, we are right, everyone is right. But we say you have a right of deciding for yourself. It doesn't mean you are right, but it means you have a right to decide for yourself, and you would see the consequences in this world and the hereafter. We are not forcing you, and we are not insulting you. We want to have peaceful life together, as the Quran says, لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينِ. You have your own faith. You want to worship idols? Okay. I worship God, you worship idols. No one is going to interfere in anyone else's faith. So, this verse I think is enough. Sayyid Muhaddis mentioned some verses, some hadith, two intellectual arguments. They are all there, but I think now enough is said about this part, and it's not very complicated. That we have to respect whoever other people worship, or the objects of their worship, and anything that they need for their worship, which is like the place of worship. I cannot say, God says, don't insult them, but destroy their temple. This is more insult, greater insult than insulting them personally. As faithful people, you imagine many times, if someone insults you personally, you take it more easily than insulting your faith. Yeah? Sometimes people say, if you see, there are bad things about Muslims, etc., don't take it personal. I said, it doesn't help. I wish it was personal. I wish they had something with me and insult me, because then it is me. But if they insult my faith, it's worse than being personal attack. So, we don't target anyone personally or any community because of their faith. But now the second part of my talk, which I think is more important, and hopefully this can be taking us further in our pursuit of unity, is to see whether we can consider sacred places of worship for Abrahamic faith sacred for all of us. I may go to a particular mosque which belongs to, for example, my denomination. But as a Muslim, I should not feel that mosques of other denominations of Islam are not mosques. They are pseudo mosques. They are fake mosques. No. As long as Muslims who worship God, they have chosen this place to dedicate to God, and they remember God even in their own way, which is different maybe from my way, I consider it as a mosque. And if I want to say prayer, I prefer to say my prayer in a Sunni mosque than, for example, on the street. Why? Because a mosque dedicated to God. Or if I am a Catholic, or if I am a Protestant or Orthodox, I shouldn't say only the church which belongs to my denomination is church and other churches are fake. Yes, we can say I go to my own church because we have to have certain ways of doing mass, communion, receive communion. That's okay. I don't have any problem with preference, but my problem is with exclusion. To say that because I cannot receive communion in this church, the other churches are fake. No, you can say to observe my rites and rituals and sacraments, I go to this church, but I respect all other churches. Okay? This is, hopefully this much is clear for us. Although some people even struggle with this. We have Muslims, for example, who explode mosques of other Muslims. Maybe we have Christians who do the same. They think church of another group, is just a place of, making plots and, mischief making. But I think most of educated people, thanks to the great work of religious leaders, thanks to the great documents of, Catholic Church and other, churches, I think most of us are now very comfortable in accepting places of worship that belong to our fellow faith people as real ones, even if it's not my choice. Okay? But still we have difficulty, or most of us, in accepting place of worship of another religion as something which is really holy and sacred. We have difficulty as a Muslim, for example, Muslim maybe, to think church is a holy place. Or as Christians to see that mosque is a holy place. Maybe still we have difficulty. We respect, but we don't think it's holy. For example, if I have something very important to request from God, and there is no mosque here, if I go to the church, how do I feel? Some Muslims may feel if they go to the church, it's not helping them, it's actually causing more problem, because they have Trinity, they have crucifixion, this kind of thing. They may not be able to see the greater picture, that despite differences between Islam and Christianity, this is where God is remembered and God is glorified. Maybe we have managed to cross denominational barriers to some extent, but still there are big walls between us when it comes to Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Still, we are considering different rooms in the house of Abraham as different houses. We have one house, the house of God, and our father is Abraham. Abraham has one house. We are all members of the same family, same tradition. 2 years ago, not 2 years ago, before COVID, in the second round, this is the fourth round, the second round that our brothers came to Tagaza, there was a conference here. I was not here, but I presented my paper. It was read by one of the brothers. And I have no time to explain that according to the Quran, God has sent only one religion. We don't have many religions. We call it Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. We read this in the books of religions, that there are different religions, each has its own founder. But we don't have any evidence, and indeed all the evidence is against this claim. I don't see anywhere that Moses says, I am founding a new religion, or Jesus says, I am founding a new religion, or Prophet Muhammad said, I am founding a new religion. We don't have this in our scriptures. In the books of religions, when they teach us, they tell us as if these things came separately from heaven and they have nothing to do with each other. Three different parallel things. But this is not the way the Quran talks about religions. All prophets and messengers had one religion, and that is to surrender yourself to God, to bring light to yourself and other people, to be just and kind. The Quran says, لَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنْ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. This was the core message of all messengers, to serve God and don't obey Satan and don't do satanic things. But we have different teachers, different guides, different role models, different scriptures, which are indeed different versions of the same scripture. This is the second claim I had in that paper. These are all different editions of the same book. Because God is the same author, and humanity is the same readers. How many books God has to write? If God was one of us, we write a book, and later we think, I have to revise it. I have to rewrite it. But God doesn't need to revise. God has one plan for humanity. We all share the same humanity. People in Africa, Asia, Europe, today, 500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, we are sharing the same humanity. Our humanity, with the humanity of people in the time of Jesus or Moses or Abraham, is the same humanity. So God doesn't need to rewrite books and revelations, but God needs to send maybe different editions based on the challenges which change and develop. In any case, I don't want to go into that discussion. That's available online. So, we have to realize that we are not dealing with other Abrahamic faith as followers of other religions. You want to use that terminology, no problem. But the accurate, from a Muslim perspective, from a Quranic perspective, the accurate understanding is we have one Lord, one path. All the prophets and messengers guided us toward the same path. Our prophet didn't bring a new religion. Our prophet is proud to follow the tradition of Abraham. This is Quran. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ دِينًا مِمَّنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ لِلَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ وَاتَّبَعَ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا. Our prophet said, I follow path of Abraham. He never says, I brought a new religion. Islam is not Muhammadan religion. Islam is the name that Abraham used to use. Isaac used to use. Joseph used to use. Jesus used to use. Means to surrender to the will of God. You want to call it something else, no problem. Names are not important. The reality is, who among us is happy to live a life of faith in God, the Creator, the merciful, the absolutely beautiful, the absolute truth? If you want to live according to the will of this God, then we follow the same tradition. I am not saying we compromise about our theological differences. No. Every theological doctrine is important, and if we are honest, we cannot compromise. We cannot dilute our faith. I am not suggesting that we forget our faith. I am suggesting that weigh the commonalities that we have against the differences in the greater framework. Let us open and widen our eyes and see how much we share. I have a challenge for you. Please think, without any prejudice, with open heart and mind that I see you. If someone shares with you your language, how much you share? For some people, they may say, sharing language is 20%. Some people are very passionate about the language, and maybe they have been studying the language, they teach literature of the language. Maybe if they share language, they say 60%. If you come, for example, from the same village, the same tribe, some people say, we share 50%, some say, we share 90%. So, if there are two people, for them, football is the most important thing. If they are fans of the same football team, they may say, 80% of our life is the same. Because football for them is the most important thing. Now, my challenge is this. If someone shares with you the same God, and this is in official teachings of Catholic Church, and we Islamic believe to say that our God is the same. I have here references here from Dept, from sayings of John Paul II. Our God is the same. No one should think our God is different. Unfortunately, some people, say, Allah is different from God. And they don't know that even Arab Christians, they call Allah. They don't say God, they say Allah. If you read the Arabic Bible, it's Allah. And if Muslims speak English, they say God. They can say God, they can say Allah. These are not important. Unfortunately, it's one country I don't want to mention. They took some Christians to the court. Why you say Allah? You are not supposed to say Allah, because you are confusing people. If it was me, I say you are more than welcome to say Allah or anything, that connects you to God. And there are some Christian also people that in their website they keep attacking Allah. They think they serve God by attacking Allah. But thanks to God, we know in our official teachings that God of Islam, God of Judaism, and God of Christianity is the same God. Okay. Now, the question is this, the challenge is this. If someone shares with you the same God, how much you share? What percentage you give? If God is center of your life, if God is the reason for your life, if someone shares with you the same God, how much you share? Pardon?
100.
Yeah. If we share the same God, then we share everything. Just then it is a matter of use your best understanding to find the way that you understand the will of this God. You understand the expectations of this God. That's the secondary issue. First, I have to make sure that, and this is my struggle, I have been in the seminary for decades, but still, I cannot, pass myself that, you are submissive to the will of God. It's a challenge for me. I try, but I'm not sure. This is the secondary thing. But I have no doubt that I have to submit myself to the will of God. So this is clear for me. So we Christians and Muslims and Jews, we share the same aim of life, and that is to move towards God, the same God, to glorify, to praise the same God. How much we are able to do it, this is a personal struggle. Even people of the same family, of the same faith, cannot get the same marks. And I am sure no one would say all the Shia are better than all the Sunnis, and all the Muslims are better than all Christians, if has any slight understanding of Islam. And the same, I don't think any Catholic, for example, would say all Catholics in the world, individual by individual, are better than all other Christians. No one would say this. Maybe there are people from other religions or other denominations who are much closer to God than me or my own family members. Imagine if you have a brother or sister in family who doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in God. But it is your sibling, it's your sibling, it's your father and mother child, like you. You share the same father, the same mother, your blood, your DNA, language, everything is the same. But he doesn't believe in God. And you believe in God and dedicate yourself to God. And there is another person who, like you, tries to submit his life to God, but it's not your brother or sister, and he's not from your country or ethnicity, and even it's not from your tradition, but really decided to dedicate his life to God. Is this person closer to you or your blood brother or sister? This is a challenge. If God is central point in my life, if God gives meaning to everything that we do, then when someone is closer to God, should be closer to me regardless of differences. One of the things that, thanks to God, I have experienced, I am more than 25 years actively, passionately, with all my heart and mind involved in Muslim-Christian relations. And thanks to God, I have seen and I have been able to witness that there are many Christians who are devoted to God. They are very sincere, very honest. I see that they have real faith. I see that. So, if there is a Muslim who has nothing to do with God, for example, he is very much after worldly things, after, just money, etc. And there is a Christian who is very much dedicated to God. Who is supposed to be closer to me? That Christian has to be closer to me. there are Muslims that I am afraid even of sitting with them for half an hour because they want to kill me. Christians also feel the same. For sure, there are Christians, and the history proves, but there are Christians that you are not comfortable to talk to them or sit with them, and they will attack you, offend you. In the course of history, there have been many fights among Muslims themselves or Christians themselves. Even today, this continues. One of the wars that is happening now, both sides are Christians. And both sides are, Orthodox. It doesn't mean that their faith is telling them this. It's human weakness. So, if God is the center of our life, when we share with someone the same God, it means we share almost everything. It's just a matter of trying to understand the will of God. After that, find the best presentation of the truth. Find the best way of connecting to God and connecting to His people. It's all secondary. But if we don't have submission to God, and we have best revelation, best tradition, if we don't have submission to God, if we want to live a life based on, liberalism, or, if we want to be, deciding for ourselves, what is right, what is wrong, then what is the point? So, now, God for us, Muslims and Christians and Jews, is the most sacred person, the most sacred thing, the most sacred being. Yeah? Because everything good comes from God. God is the source of light, the source of beauty, source of knowledge, wisdom. So He is the source of sacredness. And everything, as much as it is connected to God, becomes sacred. Yeah? Everything which is connected to God is sacred. Those who are very spiritual, those who have mystical insight, they can see connection of everything with God. Therefore, for them, everything is sacred. For true mystics, even insects are sacred. Even soil and water and air are sacred. Why? Because they see everything as creation of God. God's signature is on all His works. We are able to see or not, that's another issue. Everything is sacred. Every life is sacred. Even life of a plant is sacred. Life of an animal is sacred. Yes, maybe God gives us permission to, for example, eat the meat of animals for our own life. But if it was not God's permission, we would not have dared killing animals. Like we have no right to kill human beings. We would not have also killed animals. But God has said, you can use animals as food, but in a responsible way. Without, doing things in excess, without damaging environment, nature, etc. So, everything is sacred. But not every people have this kind of vision, that they can see every human being as sacred. Every plant, every animal, every drop of water as sacred. Not every person can understand this. This is for mystics. This is for spiritual people. Of course, open to us. We can also move to that direction. But what is visibly connected to God? And more, not only is connected to God, is connecting many people to God. Obviously, that is sacred. Okay? So, I have three claims. The most sacred one is God. Number two, everything is coming from God is sacred. Number three, what is visibly and obviously sacred is something which is coming from God, but able to connect us to God. This becomes most sacred. Like what? Like the Scriptures. Scriptures are sacred. Forests are also sacred. But the sacredness is not the same. A scripture comes from God, nature comes from God, but a scripture is meant to take us to God in an obvious way. Of course, even by seeing trees and rivers, you can be reminded of God. But the way revelation and scripture connects us to God is different. It's more obvious. It's meant to be speaking and communicating to us. So, all the scriptures become sacred. Whether it is in Jewish tradition, whether it's Torah, or it's Gospel, or the Quran. Because these are from God for taking us towards God. Any messenger, any prophet, anyone who is sent by God and is inviting to go towards God is a holy person, is a sacred person. Whether it's a person that in my tradition considers prophet, or I don't consider as prophet. Of course, thanks to God, we Muslims and Christians, we share all the prophets. Yes, when it comes to Jesus, we have some different understanding. We think Jesus is a prophet, a great messenger. Our Christian brothers and sisters, they think Jesus is Son of God. But we all have great respect for Jesus, and we all agree that Jesus is able to connect us to God. Yeah? So, these people, or in another level, religious leaders who preach and connect us to God, they are also sacred, they are also holy. It doesn't need to be an infallible prophet, for example. Look at the Quran. The Quran in the verse 82 of chapter 5, which was several times cited today. The Quran says, you find the nearest people to you are Christians. The nearest people to Muslims. Why? This is very important. If you manage to reflect on psychology, if it is a good word, of who is saying these words, if it is proper to use psychology for God. So, what is in the mind, of course, if someone says it is from the Prophet, or for me as a Muslim, I say this from God, what is meant by the author of this book? It's very amazing if you reflect on this. Islam is a new entity. It's very new with lots of challenges. If it was a work of human being, then it was very natural that the Prophet should look at Christians as rivals. Yeah? If it was a politics, a worldly politics, if the Prophet was thirsty for having more followers and power, so he should think that Christians are rivals, because it's the same market. Yeah, we want to attract the market. Christians become our rivals. Then, when Christians are your rivals, who would be the Christian with whom you have greatest trouble? Priests and monks and nuns. Yeah? Because these are the people that are making Christians aware of faith and giving them encouragement to carry on. So if two religions look at each other as rivals, then the most natural target would be religious leaders of the other community. But since this is from God, God of Christians and God of Muslims, God says you find the nearest people to you are Christians, and then He says there are two reasons. Of course, there are more, two are mentioned here. One, ذَلِكَ بَأَنَّ مِنْهُمْ قِسِّيسِينَ وَرُهْبَانَ. Christians are nearest to you because among them there are priests and monks. So God in the Quran is giving credit to Christian priests and monks and nuns. So I as a Muslim, when I read this, what should I understand? I should respect priests and monks, or I should not respect them? If I am a true Muslim, I should respect them. Because my Lord is saying that if Christians are nearer to you, partly is because of what priests and monks are doing. And partly, وَذَلِكَ بَأَنَّهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. The second is that Christians are not arrogant. True Christians are humble. So you don't find the language of rivalry or competition or even a stranger. It's one family. It's family of God. Family directed by the Abraham, by Moses, by Jesus, by Prophet Muhammad. But it's one family. You can be Sunni, Shia, Catholic, Protestant. That's between you and God. You always keep searching for the truth. But as long as you are loving God and want to go back to God with all your energy, your power, it's the same family. So, Scriptures are sacred because they come from God and connect us with God visibly. Religious leaders like imams, priests, monks, nuns, they are also receiving some sacredness because they connect us to God. If there is an imam or a priest who is not good, that is exception. We cannot judge about the position of priesthood or being imam based on bad cases. The position is great. And there are many good people who wholeheartedly serve the post that God has given them. And then places of worship. Places of worship are also sacred. In a visible way. Why? Every place can be sacred, as I said. But when you dedicate a place to God, that's different. You know, I can say my salat, my prayer, even in a park. Yeah? If it's a public park, if there is no private property, I can say my prayer there. I can say my prayer next to river. I can say my prayer anywhere. Therefore, every place is a place of worship. It's sacred. But if a place is dedicated to God, some faithful people, Christians, Muslims, they have dedicated a slot of land to worship of God. They don't use it for business. They don't use it for, other things. They only use this for God. This place becomes sacred for all of us. Not that it's a sacred place for Christians or a sacred place for Muslims. It's a sacred place for all of us. Why? Because God is glorified here. The Quran says in chapter 22, verse 14, had it not been that God repels some people by some people, God defends against bad people by using good people. In one place, in another place, God says, لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضِ. Had it not been that good people stop bad people, earth would be corrupt. But in this verse, instead of saying earth becomes corrupt, mentions one case, which is part of corruption. One instance of corruption of the earth is what? لَهُدِّمَتْ صَوَامِعُ وَبِيَعُ وَصَلَوَاتٌ وَمَسَاجِدُ. If there were not good people to protect under God's will, synagogues will be destroyed, monasteries will be destroyed, churches would be destroyed, mosques would be destroyed. So now, am I right to say that as a Muslim, for me, church is sacred? Synagogue, monastery, and mosque are sacred? Yes. And God then gives the reason. يُذْكَرُ فِيهَا اسْمُ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا. These are the places in which God is remembered a lot. So Quran appreciates when Christians go to church and make their own prayer. It is zikrullah. It is remembrance of God. Jews go to the synagogue, they worship God. Quran says they are remembering God. And Muslims go to the mosque. Quran says they are remembering God. So God, who is universal, who is God of all of us, has appreciation of what we do in church or monastery or synagogue or mosque. God has appreciation. And if I'm a follower of God, I should then have high regard for these places. So, God is the most sacred. Everything connected to God is sacred, but not everyone understands. Mystics, spiritual people understand. But then what is visibly connected to God and helps us to connect to God is sacred for all of us. You don't need to be a mystic to understand this. Just have common sense. You don't need to be very educated to understand that these are important places. We benefit from these places. You know, when we go to monasteries, I say to them, I appreciate as a Muslim what you do, because these are powerhouses. When people in monastery pray, do you think they only benefit themselves? I think we all as human beings benefit from prayers of monks and nuns. We all benefit from prayers of Muslims, prayers of Jews, prayers of Christians. And these places of worship are sacred, and we have to consider as something sacred for us, not just something that is sacred for another one and I want to be polite. That is the first level. The second level is different. I stop here. I thank God the Almighty for showing Himself to us and enabling us to connect to Him and opening our eyes to see His greatness. God is not a small God that only can be worshipped by some group. God is universal God. We thank God that we have understood that He is God of all of us, and we ask Him to help us so that we also be serving all His people. A true servant, a true believer is the one that aims at serving all creation of God. Thank you very much. Alhamdulillah.